Hi, it's your buddy Mike Messier. This is part 2 of the special videocast podcast, Life Lessons with Mikey Messier, episode 3, part 2, or is it episode 4, moving. So if you haven't watched the first episode, you might want to check that out, but basically to get right back into it, the logistics of my move were such that I was moving on my own. I did not have a spouse. I did not have any type of moving partner as someone to go with me. However, there was some things that I did in preparation that certain people did help me out with. 3 friends in particular I would give a special note to. Well, first of all, my sister hopped into the fray, and really at the last minute, especially the last 3 or 4 days of part of my move, helped me clean out my apartment in New England. So that was a big thanks. And she helped me with some of the organizational approaches to the move as well. The second person I would thank, a buddy of mine named Steve. Steve came through in a big way, helping me to move some of the bigger items and some of the smaller items as well out of my New England apartment and to an auction house. Now I'll go into this for a minute. When you move, it's a time to get rid of some stuff. It's a time to, sell, give away, or throw out. I mean, those are basically the 3 things you can do or take with you. So 4 choices. Are you going to take stuff, throw stuff out, give it away, or what? And of course, if you're moving, you might need some money. And so if you can sell anything, that's always helpful. Now, there's different ways of selling stuff. You can have a yard sale, you can do whatever you want. One way that I discovered was through an auction house. So this auction house in Rhode Island was able to take some of my stuff. It didn't have to be very valuable stuff, and they could auction it. And so they Bruno and Associates in Cranston, Rhode Island. So if you happen to be in Rhode Island or even nearby Massachusetts or Connecticut, it might be worth looking them up. I found them to be a good company to deal with, to do business with. Did they get me a ton of money for stuff? No. But I think they got me a fair price. And even the few bucks add up because I had tons and tons of stuff. So my buddy Steve was, I think, 2 or 3 trips, probably 3 or 4, of him coming to my apartment from quite a distance, us packing up his truck and taking the stuff to the auction house, and eventually they'd pay me. Now then, I had another buddy. What I realized with some of my stuff, I had a lot of pro wrestling merchandise, action figures, memorabilia, books, DVDs, even VHS tapes. Another friend of mine up in the Boston area, a guy named Morrow, was very helpful in me because he basically became my eBay manager. So Morrow took a lot of my stuff off my hands. I think there was 2 trips. One that he came to my place and I filled his car full of boxes upon boxes of stuff. And about a week later, I drove up to him with boxes and boxes of stuff, and he's still selling stuff to this day. So if you have an interest in any wrestling stuff that was once owned by me that you want to purchase for yourself, you can ask me for the eBay address. But so that answer, or that aspect of things, what do you do with your stuff? Basically there's 4 things. Sell it, give it away, throw it away, which is probably the worst thing you can do, or take it with you. I guess you could also have a storage, which I also implemented. I had some things that I've left behind in New England. And really, people that are in the military or people that make sudden moves, my move was really like an 8-month plan. I mean, I really had to plan this thing out. I had to go at my own pace. I think a lot of times people don't want to move because they're intimidated by the process of moving and all the pains and the asses that occur from moving. But my theory, or what I did to get this accomplished, was to give myself plenty of time. Now we move on to the next aspect, which was the actual moving. Now here was the catch-22. I was moving, but I had nowhere to go. In other words, I did not have an apartment or a home locked in or locked up or whatever you want to call it. I did not have something waiting for me in Jacksonville, Florida that I was headed to I literally drove from Rhode Island and, you know, going at my own pace, taking 3 or 4 days, using Airbnb, crashing in my buddy Jason's house, my friend Tony's house in North Carolina, and getting to my destination city, still using Airbnb. And I found that a lot of online brokerage websites, there's a nice view here, folks. A lot of online brokerage websites were full of old posts. So some of these posts that you see of people looking for roommates or looking for housemates or someone to rent a room, they're old material. And I guess some of these websites are trying to squeeze people for $1 or $2 for a subscription package or something, or advertising dollars from the websites. The point is, the most success I got was from posting my own post. Hey, I'm Mike and I'm coming to town. And I had several photos of myself doing nice things that I posted online on Craigslist, and someone actually responded to my post. Now this is where it gets a little interesting. I don't want to get too detailed, but basically my first night in Jacksonville, I stayed in an Airbnb for literally like 25 bucks. The second night I had a place to live, and basically how it worked was I was renting a room and which had its own bathroom and everything from the nice townhouse. The woman renting the townhouse was not there at the time, and yes, I thought that might be a little sketchy, but I met her boyfriend who explained to me the situation. She was in the process of moving. Long story short, I was in that place for about 6 weeks, and it was a really nice neighborhood in Atlantic Beach, Florida. I met the neighbors, I went to pool parties, there was a pool in the neighborhood, I was having a grand old time. Everything was working out, but unfortunately, this lady who was a nice person, she did have a dog, a little terrier, Russell Terrier dog, who came from the dog. You know, I was in this townhouse for 6 weeks by myself, but this dog finally came back, and the lady came back, and the dog did not like me or anybody else. The dog only liked her. So I decided shortly thereafter to move out, and I was back on my own looking for another place, but I found another place within days. My friend Harrison, my same buddy who recommended Jacksonville to me in the first place, knew a woman. She needed a person to live in the house, to pay rent, and I accepted that deal, and I've been there ever since. So I've actually had to move twice. Now, I did have some physical things going on. There was another obstacle. I had some physical situations, medical situations that were not great, that kind of flared up between my move, and to be honest, I was concerned I wouldn't even be able to move because I had these physical things coming up, which luckily I was learning to just pace myself and just be very open with people and say, look, I can't move everything at once, I have to take my time, blah 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 blah. So, you know, being your own advocate, you know, and a lot of people they get into situations that are bad. Everybody does this, where you're trying to make everybody happy, or you're trying to accommodate everyone, but you really have to accommodate yourself. Now, in my situation, once again, this was a move I needed to make, I felt, for myself, because if I waited 5 years, I don't think I would have moved, you know, and that's before this coronavirus thing. I just had the feeling internally that in 5 years from now, I'd be too tired, I'd be too exhausted, I'd be too beaten down by life. Maybe I'd have more medical situations. Maybe I'd get caught up in something business-wise, interpersonal relationship-wise, that would make it harder for me to move out of New England. I really felt like I had to make my move. So I did the Airbnb thing, I got to this apartment, unpacking my stuff, and then it's like, okay, now what the hell do you do? Then you have these, you know, everyone's gonna have this. You're talking about your driver's license, all these things, driver's license, your car, bills, you know, old bills from New England that are, I had to deal with the companies and tell them that, you know, the electric company in New England was horrible. They kept trying to charge me even though I was gone, and I told them, I called them many times. Eventually things worked out. To be honest, there's still stuff I'm going through now. But when I think about, like I said, once again, this is about an hour south of where I'm living now. And this is a Friday night. And yes, we are in the middle of quarantine, but as you can see, there's no one 6 feet around me. I just felt like, wide open spaces, Dixie Chicks. I felt like at times putting that song on the CD, yes, CD, to listen to Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks to, move forth with my life. Now, getting to Jacksonville and kind of ingratiating myself in whatever scene I could find, I'll be honest, I did not feel the need, the compelling need. Maybe if I was, younger, a few years younger in my early 20s, I might feel the need to go around and introduce myself and bring brownies to every neighbor's house and go, make friends. I really didn't feel that way. It called me antisocial, but at some point I figured, hey, I'm here for the long haul. I don't need to rush out and bake brownies or do anything ridiculous. Life will come to me, I will come to it. I didn't feel the need to rush and to shove myself down anybody's throats, if that makes any sense. I mean, I thought a lot of people, friends from New England, were very concerned. Oh, do you have a support system? And do you have people to call? And blah, 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 fuck. Well, I mean, the reality is, when I was in New England, a lot of Friday and Saturday nights, I was spending by myself in the coffee house anyway, to be quite honest. I mean, people, at least in my circles in New England, if there wasn't some organized thing to do, just hanging out with people became passé a while ago. Like, people just don't do stuff for fun or for social activities. And I always found myself with the fucking laptop on a Friday night at the coffee house anyway in New England, and I've had many of those nights in Florida as well. So I didn't really feel like I was missing out on something. Look, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be some social event or activity that if you're geographically in one place, you can't be in the other place. That's just part of simple math. You can't be in two places at once. But I always felt like, the things that I were doing in Jacksonville were not terribly different from what I was doing in Rhode Island. See if there's any other parts of this I can cover as far as life lessons. I moved down the East Coast. A lot of people, I kind of covered this in the first episode, a lot of people, why don't you go to California, LA, New York City? Well, I'm glad I didn't go to New York City now, to be honest with you, what they've experienced, and God bless them. But even things like California, it's just so expensive, blah, blah, blah. I had to go someplace that I felt worked for me. It's not about me trying to knock off anyone else's criteria or trying to impress anybody. Oh, I moved to LA, I moved to New York, I moved to Chicago. I don't have that need to fill anyone else's expectation but my own. I'm sure there's plenty of cities. You can move to Seattle, you can move to Poughkeepsie, you can move to Albany, New York. There are plenty of places. Asheville, North Carolina. I know someone in New England who was a real pain in the ass and everybody got sick of. She moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and apparently she's made a nice little life for herself. So, to me, moving is a good thing, and I feel that I need to, make this two-part video because I felt the need that someone out there might be watching this. Look at that. Someone watching this might feel the need that they needed to move. They needed to get out of their place of living. And, we all have to do that at some point. So there you have it. As far as other things I can tell you about the actual move, look, it does take some money. I'm not going to lie to you. I had to save up money, a couple of $1,000s in order to pull this move off. It's not free to move. You're going to give up things, things that you're going to have. To be honest, some of the toughest part of moving came down to the last day of throwing things in the dumpster and looking at them and saying goodbye. Okay, I guess I'll get into one aspect of my move that some people are following me around. There's an aspect of my particular move that might be interesting or a lesson for everybody. I moved with a car full of stuff from New England to Florida, but I left my apartment still full of stuff back home in New England. So I had to go back I had to go back a month after getting there to Florida and head back in order to clean out my apartment. And the reason why I did this was because I had too much stuff for one car full. I had to go back to New England, drive all the way back, clean out the apartment in the second round. That's when I did some of that stuff with the auction house and everything else. The reason to do this was I did not really want to go the route of U-Haul. How was I going to tell U-Haul where to take my stuff if I didn't have a place to live yet? And I couldn't really make a place to live or sign in for a place to live in Florida without being there to introduce myself, to see the place and so forth. So there were some reasons to it. So I basically moved twice. I moved to Florida, got settled, came back, got the rest of my stuff, got rid of some stuff, whether it was the auction, the eBay, or the dumpster, or giveaways. And I did give a lot of stuff away to Salvation Army and stuff like that. So, and even those companies, to be honest, are a pain in the ass in some regard. I mean, some of these companies, big brothers, big sisters, I think they were easy to deal with. But some of these places that you give your stuff to, they make you jump through fucking hoops just to give them your stuff. So, and I did a lot of Craigslist giveaways. I gave away, you know, a very expensive bed setup to some woman that her house just burned down or some such thing. So I was Mr. Nice Guy, you know what I mean? Like I said, this moving process, it does cost money. It's not cheap, it's not easy. I would say, you know, but if you have between $5,000 or $8,000, just because, you know, no matter how you do it, it's not going to be totally free to get up and move. It's just not. So I can't tell you how to move for free, nor would I try. But in any event, I do feel that my life is a bit regenerated now, a bit recharged. I do feel like, you know, I do have more optimism or more interest in living, you know, to be quite blunt. You know what I mean? So things, sometimes you just need a change of perspective, a change of scenery, and so forth. So I think I'll wrap this up. For the Wrestling with the Future podcast, Mike Messier, Life Lessons with Mikey Messier, Episode 3, Part 2, Moving. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say, other than, once again, just to reiterate for the millionth time, if you feel stagnant, if you feel stuck, if you feel like you're off track, or you're just kind of repeating yourself, don't listen to people that give you that line of bullshit. Wherever you are, your problems go with you, or moving's not the cure. Don't listen to that garbage. That's usually coming from people that haven't moved, or haven't moved in a long time, or maybe their motivation is to keep you stuck around. I mean, that's one thing I have thought of. The people, and there were some people that were negative about me moving. I think most of those people were just comfortable in how I helped fill in the gaps in their lives as an unpaid counselor or a friend or whatever the fuck. But for me, to achieve some type of happiness in my own life, I felt the need to get the fuck out of New England and try something different. And whether that pays off or it doesn't, you know, I feel pretty good about it. I feel like I've made the right move, so to speak. Mikey Messier, Life Lessons. Be sure to watch the other episode. Episode 1, Hard Luck as an Actor. Episode 2, Screenwriting. And MikeMessier.com, Wrestling with the Future podcast, Avalonia Festival, distancefromavalon.com, Mike Messier on YouTube, Vimeo, and so forth. Thank you.